Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Hi. Uh, we'll continue from the point where we left off. It was excess pressure that we had seen, excess pressure inside a drop and inside a soap bubble.
Yeah, yeah,
Inside a drop and soap bubble. So that we had seen was 2s by r, and this was 4s by r, because in the soap bubble there was a film, there were two flares.
Yeah.
right, yeah.
So that was okay. So that is some fact that you need to know. Now the next topic was contact angle. So contact angle is basically when the liquid surface touches a solid surface. It doesn't touch in a way which is perpendicular all the time. So if there is a solid surface here, capillary tube or something, and this is a liquid, it will not always be perpendicular. So it could be like this, or it could also be like this, depending on the liquid. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So clearly now, since the liquid surface is curved, there will be an angle between the liquid surface and the solid, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that angle we will define as a contact angle. So let's understand how to define. We cannot define an angle between a line and a curve, right? So therefore, we have to have two lines. Which two lines will we take? We'll take tangent planes. Okay.
Yeah.
So in figure 14.22, he describes that. So the liquid surface, draw a tangent line to the liquid surface. Okay. So if the liquid surface is like this, draw a tangent line to the liquid surface. This tangent and this wall, this solid line, right? The angle between them is defined as contact angle, theta contact. Okay.
yeah,
So if the liquid curves upward, then it is an acute angle. The contact angle comes out to be acute.
Yeah.
And if the liquid curves downward like this, then the tangent line is like this, right? And then again, this line is always vertical, this line, and you will say that this is an obtuse angle of the contact. This contact angle will be obtuse.
yeah,
Now you can think of different types of liquids, and they will have different behavior with respect to a glass surface and all. So for example, water behaves more like this, water, and mercury will behave more like this. How can I be sure that mercury will behave like this? So if you notice, mercury, I mean, if you have ever seen mercury from a thermometer, right? If a thermometer breaks, like old mercury thermometers, right? So the mercury drops become they are very globular, like in the sense that they have very high surface tension. So they tend to shrink their surface area like this, and very easy to form drops of mercury. And even a big drop will break apart into tiny drops like this. Okay.
yeah,
So it basically has a strong tendency to be like this rather than wetting the glass surface like this. It basically has a strong intermolecular or cohesive force, right? So
Yeah.
it has a higher tendency to be like this, and the angle of contact will be obtuse in case of mercury. So we will understand this in a little more detail about why this angle is like this in water and like this in mercury. So let's read what he's writing here. The angle of contact will depend on multiple forces. So if you look at the page here, 14.13 second paragraph, he's defining first angle between tangent planes at the solid surface and liquid surface at the contact is called the contact angle. In this, the tangent plane to the solid surface is to be drawn towards the liquid, and the tangent plane to the liquid is to be drawn away from the solid. So this convention is important to remember, that the solid tangent line is drawn towards the liquid and liquid tangent line is drawn away from the liquid, right?
yeah, yeah,
Away from the solid. Liquid tangent line is drawn away from solid always, not towards the solid. So don't draw it like this. If you
Yeah.
draw it like this, then your angle will be this, right?
yeah,
So it's just a matter of convention. Somebody could have started off by drawing it like this, and then we would have called that one the contact angle, right? So it's a convention thing. So draw your liquid tangent line away from the solid. So now this and this will be the angle between them will be the contact angle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the case of this, see, this is also away from solid, right? Away from solid, and solid tangent line is towards the liquid. Towards the liquid is this side, right? Correct.
Yeah.
So make sure that you underline that portion. That is important because questions could be asked where you have 3-4 different capillaries and they ask you what is the contact angle in each of the cases and stuff like that, right? And you have to
Yeah.
be able to draw it properly. Okay, so that you need to know. Now he's saying for the liquid that rises along the solid surface, the contact angle is acute, and for liquid that is depressed along the solid surface, contact angle is greater than 90, right? So see in the table, mercury with glass, it is 140 degree, and water with glass contact angle is 0. So that means water is almost perpendicular to glass, right? Water surface, then only tangents will make 0 angle. No?
Yeah. Yeah.
So water doesn't rise up much, but water with paraffin. So paraffin is a material, and in that water will be like this, right? So it is
Yeah. Yeah.
acute obtuse angle 107 degree,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so now you are seeing that different solids and different liquids have different contact angles. So why is that happening? So why is the liquid surface bending near the contact with a solid? So the reason is because liquid in equilibrium liquids cannot bear tangential stress, can't support any tangential stress. So what does this mean? What this means is if a liquid is stationary, then components, the net tangential force has to be 0. Net tangential force along the surface basically has to be 0, right? Because as soon as tangential force is non-zero, the liquid layer will actually move.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the liquid will no longer be stationary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is what he's saying. The resultant force on any small part of the surface layer must be perpendicular to the surface there, right? Resultant if the tangential component is 0, then the resultant force is perpendicular, right?
Yeah.
Resultant force is always perpendicular to liquid surface. That is the rule. It's perpendicular to liquid surface. So now what we have to do here is balance out 3 different forces. Okay. So consider a small part of the liquid surface near its contact with the solid. So 14.23 figure, right? Now let's look at figure A, and in that he's saying forces small part of the liquid near its contact. So what is he referring to? He's referring to this small part of the liquid here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So for this part of the liquid, the forces are attraction Fs due to molecules of the solid surface near it. That is an adhesive force, right? This is the attraction of solid molecules to liquid molecules, Fs.
Yeah.
Then weight of the liquid, W, right? And force due to liquid molecules. Liquid molecules are also attracting these. That is a cohesive force, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is cohesive, this is adhesive, and there is weight of the liquid, right? So there are 3 forces happening here, Fs, Fl, and W, right? Now, what has to happen is resultant of these 3 has to be perpendicular to the surface, okay? Or you can say the actual thing that you have to say is whatever is resultant vector, right? Whatever is resultant force vector, right? The surface will take a shape which is normal to that.
Yeah.
Surface takes a shape, takes a curvature or shape that makes F resultant normal to it, right? You understand? So 3 forces you have to add. Okay.
Yeah.
FL, FS, W. Whatever is the resultant could be this side, could be this side, right?
Hmm.
Right. Yeah.
So if result, because depends on FS and FL,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if it was this side, then this has to be F resultant, then surface has to be like this, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
If it is this side, right, then surface has to be like this,
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because resultant force has to be perpendicular to the surface,
Surface.
right? So part
Hmm.
A, in part A, he has drawn capital F to be this side. This is your capital F resultant, okay?
Yeah.
That is the combination of Fs, Fl, and W, right? Basically, this means that Fs is more dominant than Fl, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. If Fs is stronger than Fl, your resultant will be this side and liquid will take this shape, right? So
Hmm.
that this force is normal to the surface, right?
But sir, I
Hmm.
thought cohesive forces were always stronger than adhesive forces.
I mean, it depends on what the materials are, no? There is no
Okay.
such
Okay.
constant, there is no
Yeah. It
such
depends
law,
on.
no? Like in the sense that suppose material has some solid has some nice hydrogen bonds with water molecules, then why not?
Okay. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
depends. Totally, it depends on what is there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is not a hard and fast rule, right? That is just generally,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So that's why different water with glass it's 0, water with paraffin it's 107. I don't know what paraffin exactly is, but you can find out. There will be some reason why water with paraffin is becoming like this, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Right? That means that the resultant force is like this. Actually, then that means that paraffin is attracting with very little force, right?
Very little.
Right. Yeah.
Right, because paraffin will be something organic and water is polar,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
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 So it will be FL will be dominating. Cohesive is stronger than adhesive here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in case of water with glass, that means let's see water with glass. What is happening here? Fs is like this, and Fl will be somewhat like this, and it is 0 degree. That means it is canceling. No, like
Hmm. Hmm.
these two are
Yeah.
somehow canceling these two forces, because this must be like this then, right? Some okay, I'm not sure, but I think glass will be attracting like this, water will be attracting like this, and these two forces cancel, and therefore net shape is like this,
Hmm.
right? Because only weight
Hmm.
is the resultant, right?
Right.
Yeah.
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 Correct. So it totally depends on the nature of the forces. We cannot make any predictions without knowing experimentally what is happening. But the reason for the shape of the surface is this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now the force between the molecules of same material is known as cohesive. Force between material of different kinds is adhesive. Now, as is clear from the figure, adhesive force Fs is perpendicular to the solid surface. Okay, so that is another fact that adhesive
Yeah.
surface will always be perpendicular to solid surface. Okay, that is
Yeah. Yeah.
important to know, because then that means that cohesive force is in the liquid and its direction and magnitude depends on the shape of the liquid surface, right? Uh, as this determines the distribution of the molecules attracting the part considered. Okay. Of course, Fs and Fl depend on the nature of the substances, especially on their densities, right?
Yeah.
So direction of the resultant of Fs, Fl, W decides the shape of the surface near the contact. The liquid rests in such a way that the surface is perpendicular to the resultant. If the resultant passes through the solid, the surface is concave up. So if the resultant force is passing through the solid, the surface will be concave up. This is concave up.
Hmm.
And if the resultant is passing through the liquid, it will be concave down, right?
Yeah.
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 So that is what he's explaining here. Uh, if a solid surface is just dipped in a liquid, figure 14.24, solid surface is just dipped in liquid so that it is not projected out, right? Okay, so generally you have solid surfaces like this where this solid part is projecting out, right?
Hmm.
solid part projecting out. In that case, he said that normal force, this force is always, Fs is always perpendicular to the solid, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's saying here that if the solid is just dipped in liquid like this, liquid is here and it is not projecting out at all, right? Then there is nothing here. So the solid's force Fs will be like this. It will not be now perpendicular to the solid because it has to attract this part, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And solid is here, it's not here, right? If it was here, it would have done this, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
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 So Fs is like this now, and the actual angle between solid and liquid surface may be different than the standard contact angle for the pair. So in this case, because normally you are not having Fs like this, you are having a different case in this case, the actual angle might be slightly different than what you would have expected.
Yeah.
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 Actual angle of contact, if it is just at the brim and not projecting out, will be different from that situation, obviously, because direction of Fs is different.
Yeah.
So whatever is the resultant, again, you have to take and you will have to realize what the shape of the surface will be. Right?
Yeah.
So people can ask you questions like, find the contact angle if given these three forces, right? So you should be in a position to solve and find that,
Yeah.
right? You can find the resultant and then take a perpendicular to that. That will be the angle, right?
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we look at rise of liquid in the capillary tube. Rise of liquid in a capillary tube. So as soon as you dip a very thin walled or a capillary tube in a liquid surface, what happens is liquid rises in it. Now, liquid will rise in it, and that rise happens because the pressure of the liquid is pushing it up. Liquid pressure is pushing it up the capillary, and it will rise to a height such that the weight of the entire column of liquid is being supported by this pressure here. Like
Yeah.
the weight of this column, right,
Yeah.
should be such that weight will be equal to this pressure into this area,
Right. Yeah.
right? Till that height it will rise. So let's look at it in a little more detail here. So he's saying when one end of a tube of small radius known as capillary tube is dipped into a liquid, the liquid rises or is depressed in the tube. Liquid rises, okay. Oh, sometimes it can even be depressed in a tube. Like
Right.
it can even go down here,
Yeah.
something like this. So these are two options that can happen. So if contact angle is less than 90, contact angle is acute, right?
Tube is like closed at the top.
Tube is open. Oh no, tube is closed at the top. Yeah, tube should be closed at the top. Because if the tube is open, then this force will also start acting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tube should be closed at the top. If contact angle is less than 90, he's saying it will rise, liquid rises.
Okay.
And if contact angle is greater than 90, then it is depressed. So we have to understand each case here. Why is that happening and all? Okay. So he's starting off with, suppose a tube of radius r is dipped into a liquid of surface tension S and density rho, right?
Yeah.
Let angle of contact between solid and liquid be theta. If the radius of the tube is small, the surface in the tube is nearly spherical. Surface in the tube is nearly spherical.
Right.
So figure 14.25 shows the situation. Now what he is doing to do is he's considering the equilibrium of the part of the liquid that is rising up in the tube, right? So look at the second figure in 14.25, the right one, right?
Yeah.
In this, he's saying the liquid is contained in a volume ABEF. ABEF is not marked on the second one, but on the left one. ABEF. Right? Forces on this part of the liquid are F1 by the surface of the tube on a surface of the tube on the surface ABCD of the liquid. So liquid, if you realize, will make it will be like this depressed, but it will make a surface on the tube, no?
Yeah.
There will be
Yeah.
a point where it is touching the entire tube, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So that ABCD circumference, right? On
Yeah.
that, there will be a force by surface of the tube, which will be F1 like this, right?
Yeah.
Now, F2 is pressure of air above the surface. Okay, so it is open right now. Okay. So F2 is due to the pressure of the air above the surface ABCD, right? So above ABCD, there is air. Okay.
Right.
So F3 is due to pressure of the liquid below EF. So below EF, liquid will apply some pressure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And weight of the W, weight of the liquid contained in this much, right? Correct. So now ABCD is the surface of the liquid inside the capillary tube, right? ABCD is the surface, right?
Yeah.
It meets the wall of the tube along a circle of radius r, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the angle made by the liquid surface with the surface of the tube is equal to the contact angle theta, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, liquid surface is depressed like this, no? It's like this liquid surface, right?
Right,
Even
right.
though it touches here, it is not like this filled to the brim, no? It is depressed, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So that angle is theta, that angle of the tangent, right? Right. So consider a small part dl of the periphery 2 pi r along which the surface of the liquid and the tube meet. Okay. Small part dl. The liquid surface across this pulls the tube by a force S dl tangentially along the liquid surface. Now, what is this force? This is surface tension acting across this SDL length, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So actually, he's considering a small part of that entire line, 2 pi r line here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So any liquid across a line exerts a force of S into L, right?
Yeah.
Across any line, surface tension force will be there, right? So he's saying liquid surface across this pulls the tube surface with a force SDL tangentially along the liquid surface, right? So
Yeah.
tangentially along the liquid surface means if my surface is depressed like this, my SDL will be like this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. So right now what he's talking about is liquid pulling the solid like this, SDL, right? Liquid pulling the solid like this. By Newton's third law, solid will pull the liquid like this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If liquid pulls the solid, solid will pull the liquid by same force, right?
Yeah.
So because we are considering free body diagram of this portion, we will consider the force that the solid exerts on the liquid, right? We'll not consider the other one because liquid is applying force on the solid, right? With SDL.
Yeah.
You understand the free body diagram of the liquid we are taking. So solid's force is what we have to consider on the liquid, right?
Yeah.
So solid applies equal and opposite surface tension force SDL, right? Okay. So the vertical component of this force will be SDL cos theta because this angle is theta, this angle will be theta, right?
Yeah, yeah.
SDL cos theta will be vertical component of this solid force, solid pulling the liquid force, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Total force exerted on the liquid surface by the tube surface across the contact circle, right? Everywhere on that contact circle, this was a tiny portion of the contact SDL, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you will go across the whole circle, everywhere solid is pulling it up like this, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
integral SDL cos theta will become simply S cos theta into 2 pi r, right?
Right. Right.
Okay. So 2 pi r S cos theta is my F1. F1 was the force that we were earlier saying was applied by the solid to the liquid, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense. Basically, that F1 is caused by the surface tension, right? So F1 comes out as S 2 pi r cos theta,
Yeah.
right? Now, the horizontal component SDL sin theta adds to 0 when summed over the entire periphery. right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
F,
Yeah.
F2 is due to pressure of the air outside the surface, which is P into pi r square, where P is atmospheric pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, why is it P into pi r square even though the surface is weirdly shaped? Because the cross section of that is pi r square, right? Area.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Atmospheric pressure acts like this actually,
Mm.
but you can say that technically the real cross section across which it is acting is pi r square, this, right?
Right. Yeah.
You could have done actually P into ds here, but this will be at an angle, no? Like ds cos theta you could add, right? Every ds cos theta and all, and it will become overall pi r square, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You understand the same derivation was there in that hemisphere when we were doing the surface tension inside a soap bubble and all, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
pressure was acting in different directions, but you can say that effective area of cross section was pi r square, right?
Yeah.
So that only he is saying here. So P into pi r square is a downward force by air pressure, right? Where P is ATM, PATM, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The pressure at EF is equal to the atmospheric pressure P. Why is that? Because it is at the same level as open to the atmosphere, that liquid zone, right?
Yeah.
Pressure
Yeah.
at this, it will be same as pressure at this, which is equal to atmospheric pressure, right?
Yeah.
So EF is in the same horizontal plane as the free surface outside the tube. So this pressure will be also equal to P into pi r square, this force.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this vertical force cancels this vertical force, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the force remaining? The weight, right?
Wait. Yeah.
So the weight has to be balanced by this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the force F1 is equal to 2 pi r s cos theta will balance the weight. Therefore, if h is the height raised in the tube, right? H is the height in the tube, the weight will become pi r square h, which is volume of the cylinder, into rho into g, right?
Yeah.
Volume into density into g, right? So pi r square h rho g should be equal to 2 pi r s cos theta, right?
Yeah.
So pi r will cancel here, pi will cancel, pi r will cancel, and you get h is equal to 2s cos theta by r rho g, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the result that you get. This is the height that it will be raised if theta is the contact angle, s is the surface tension, r is the radius of the capillary, and rho is the density of the liquid, right?
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
that happens because of the surface tension force SDL that is pulling it up from the solid to the liquid, which will be balanced by the weight of the liquid in the capillary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Upward and downward pressures also exert forces, but they get cancelled out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, notice that here, if your cos theta was obtuse, then it will be less than 0, right?
Right.
If your cos theta was contact angle was obtuse, it will be depressed now, no? H is negative,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that will give you the depression, amount of depression also, same equation. Okay.
Yeah.
So you understand, no?
Yeah.
That case is completely different. It is like this now, right? And so solid is pulling it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, wait. We have to think about whether solid pulls it down or not, but it should pull it down, and there will be pressure differences also, right? So
Yeah.
pressure differences also will be there. So you have to think a little bit. There will be an unbalanced force between the pressures and the weight. Actually, he has not drawn the FBD for that. We can think about it, but right now he's not focusing on that part. He's just saying if H is negative, this formula gives depression. If theta is negative, If theta is obtuse, you will get depression from this formula. So probably you should try and work out how the depression free body diagram and all will look and all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will also think about it. I have not done that thing yet. There is one more section addition to it where he talks about the correction due to the weight of the liquid contained in the meniscus. So right now, think about it. When you are doing the weight of the liquid, you are assuming that it is a cylinder, right?
Yeah.
Actually, it is not just a cylinder. There is a little extra, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
This was the h that was measured, pi r square h, right? So
Mhm.
the little extra can also is also there, right? So
Yeah.
the formula gives a slightly wrong answer. So he's saying the correction due to the weight of the liquid contained in the meniscus can easily be made if the contact angle is zero. If the contact angle is zero, this is the case with water rising in a glass capillary. So, okay. Volume of the shaded part. Volume of the shaded part he will calculate, and weight of the liquid contained in the meniscus he finds out, and then he adds that to the weight of the liquid in the cylinder, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
equating it to 2 pi r s, because cos theta is 1 if
Right.
contact angle is
Right.
0.
Yeah.
He's adding the weight of the liquid in the cylindrical part and weight in the liquid in this part, right? And
Mhm.
this part is coming out to be basically 1 by 3 pi r cube, right? Oh, basically the volume of this part was pi r square h, and this part is coming out to be 1 by 3 pi r cube, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Volume of the shaded part. You should probably remember this because it will be hard to derive it in the exam. This volume,
Okay. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So he has done it how? He has calculated pi r square into r. So if you have pi r square area of cross section multiplied by r, this is the total volume, right? Till here.
Mhm.
Pi r, so pi r cube. So he will subtract from pi r cube, he is subtracting the volume of a hemisphere, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So 1 by 2 into, so from pi r cube, if you subtract 2 by 3 pi r cube, you'll get 1 by 3 pi r cube, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that is the volume in this part. So 1 by 3 pi r cube into rho g. So eventually what will happen is pi r square h rho g plus 1 by 3 pi r cube rho g should be equal to 2 pi r s. And from here you will get h, right?
Yeah.
H
Yeah.
finally comes as 2s by r rho g minus r by 3.
Yeah.
Right? So basically, because of this extra weight, the height that you calculated earlier was more, and it will be slightly lower, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. So that is this thing. Mostly you will be using this formula only, most of the time. This correction will be in rare cases. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Then what happens if there is a tube of insufficient length? So what do we mean by insufficient length? So what we mean is basically, let's say your h came out to be 2s cos theta by rpg, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
came out to be 10 right? Correct, suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the tube length actually is only 8 right? Tube length is 8 so it wants to rise up further, but it can't, right?
Yeah.
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 So if the tube is of a length less than h, the liquid does not actually overflow. What happens is the angle made by the liquid surface with the tube will change in such a way. Angle made by the liquid surface in the tube will change in such a way that 2 pi r s cos theta equals the weight of the liquid raised. So the theta changes basically. 2 pi r s cos theta changes in such a way that it is equal to the weight of the liquid raised. So you will not have this h is not going to be the same. It's not going to rise up till 10 it will stay here only, but whatever is the weight of the liquid raised, right? 2 pi rs cos theta has to still balance it, and cos theta has to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Probably we need a couple of examples for this. I'll try and find out some relevant problems on this so that we can practice this.
Right.
But this capillary portion and the excess pressure portion, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that you read surface tension, excess pressure, and capillaries. Make sure that you read this once more and check all the questions in the exercise from this part, because it is quite tricky and sometimes questions can be hard here. Also, like, questions can be asked from this part and you need to be prepared for it. So just make sure that you look through the questions in the exercise and all.
Yeah.
I will also find some practice questions and maybe if possible, I'll send it to you. The rest of the chapter is quite easy. So after this point, it is not difficult at all. Viscosity and all is easy. You need to be very clear with the definitions. There are 4 or 5 things now from here to the end of the chapter, and each thing has a different meaning and a different definition and all. So you have to be very sure about all the definitions. So what is viscosity? Viscosity is basically fluid friction, right?
Yeah.
So when a layer of liquid is moving across another layer of liquid, right? There is friction between these layers. Okay. So he has shown this figure 14.27, which is relevant. So 14.27, see something, if it is going on some boat is going on a liquid surface, right? So imagine the water at the bottom of the sea, right? That is completely at rest, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
every layer above it is going forward at slight speeds. Okay. Because this portion, this layer is being driven forward at some speed. So that effect is transferred a little bit. This layer will go at slightly lesser speed. This layer will go at slightly lesser speed. Eventually, it will be going at 0 speed here.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what you can construct from this is a velocity gradient. Velocity gradient, that means basically dv by dz or something. dv by dh also you can write. So how fast does velocity change from this point to this point, right?
Yeah.
Right? Velocity is going to be diminishing with time, with height, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how fast does that change? So this velocity gradient turns out to be important while calculating the force of viscosity or fluid friction that opposes any motion in a fluid, right? So by experimental verification, people have found that force of viscosity is proportional to the area of cross section which the boat has or whatever is moving has, right?
Yeah.
Whatever is the area in contact with it, and it's also proportional to the velocity gradient. Okay.
Yeah.
So you will have force of viscosity will be equal to some k a dv by dz, right? And we put a minus sign because it's a negative friction type of force, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
will be resisting in nature. So
Yeah.
finally you will have this equation, force is equal to minus this constant is called coefficient of viscosity, this k, and a dv by dz, right? This is my force of viscosity acting on a body, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you will realize from here that if it is a deep lake, right, this dv by dz will be small, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it is a shallow lake, it will be higher, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's why big or heavy vessels and all, they need deep waters, because then coefficient of friction is lower. This viscosity force will be lower if it is high depth, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And A is fixed, right? Anyway, for whatever ship is passing through, A is fixed. You need to basically reduce this dv by dz, right?
Yeah.
Because this is also fixed, this is also fixed. You can only tamper with this. So you can probably go on a deep water track to prevent viscosity or reduce viscosity, right? So that is important to know. Also, the SI unit of viscosity has to be figured out. So you can get the dimensions of viscosity coefficient by just dividing and all. So it will be Newton per meter square by meter per second divided by meter, right?
Yeah.
So it will be kg meter per second square. So kg meter per second square and meter square, and second will go on top, right? So it will be kg per second meter, kg per meter second, right? Something like that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Or Newton per second meter square, right? That thing is called one poise. So one poise is in honor of the French scientist Poiseuille, and that guy was the one who made this Poiseuille's equation. That is important. The next section. Okay. So this coefficient of viscosity is one poise, and that is 0.1 Newton second meter square.
Yeah.
So that is important to know again, that if someone says 10 poise, right? 10 poise is the coefficient of viscosity.
Hmm.
Then that means it is 1 Newton second by meter square. Okay, because 1 poise is supposed to be 0.1 Newton second by. So in SI units, whatever you calculate, you have to divide by 10
Hmm.
to get in terms of poise, right? The
Yeah.
n.
Yeah.
So remember this F is equal to minus NA dV by dz, and the unit of this, the unit conversion. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then here, the next thing, the Poiseuille's equation is about flow through a narrow tube. So right now, what is the difference between what we just now saw and what is we are seeing now? Flow through a narrow tube. So viscosity was fluid friction, right? Anything moves on the surface, this is the friction that it will face, right?
Hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Now the next thing that we are doing is flow of liquid through a narrow tube, flow of fluid, basically, flow of liquid. So how fast is liquid going to flow through a tube, right? Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a little different, right? If you understand. So earlier we were having another body moving through a liquid, right? That was viscosity. The retarding force on a body that moves over a liquid surface is viscosity. This is actually telling us how fast will liquid flow through a tube, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is totally different, right?
Hmm.
So suppose a fluid flows through a narrow tube in steady flow. We know what steady flow is, right?
Right. Yeah.
Steady flow is
Right.
very
Yeah.
predictable sort of fluid flow, where if you know the velocity and direction of a particle of fluid at a certain point in time at a certain place, then you know that whatever fluid particles coming to that point will always have the same velocity and direction,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
is steady flow. Now he's saying because of viscosity, the layer that is in contact with the walls of the tube will have zero velocity, right?
Right.
Fluid that is in contact with the tube walls will have zero velocity, right? And the layers which are away from the fluid wall will move fast, right?
Yeah.
Correct. So
Yeah.
he derived a form. So there is a variation in the speeds, right, of the fluid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Poiseuille derived a formula for rate of the flow of viscous fluid. It's important to realize rate of flow of viscous fluid through a tube. So Poiseuille is not ignoring the viscosity here. Okay. Earlier, when we were doing equation of continuity and all, we were ignoring viscosity, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We did not think about viscosity and all. We just did AV is equal to A1V1 is A2V2 and Bernoulli's theorem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now you are taking into account the fluid friction here. Okay. So how much is the rate of fluid flow here? Rate of fluid flow. That is what we are going to find out when it is a viscous fluid. Okay.
Yeah.
So rate of fluid will be given by some volume per unit time, V by T type of thing, right? How much volume of fluid is coming in,
Volume. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So Now the derivation, the actual derivation of this is quite hard. So what he has done is done by dimensional analysis. Dimensional analysis will help you get a correct formula for this. As long as you know what factors it should depend on, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Correct. So if you know what factors it depends on, then you'll be able to do a proper dimensional analysis thing. So we can assume that it will depend on viscosity coefficient. It will depend on density of the liquid, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it depends on radius and length, right?
yeah,
Length of the tube and radius of the tube, right? These are the variables that he has taken. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And also the pressure difference between the ends, obviously. Like this pressure and this pressure. If there's a higher pressure here, then it should flow faster, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
If the delta P is high, the fluid flow should be higher, right?
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Correct. So he has taken all of these variables and he's saying let P be the pressure difference in the liquid at the two ends. It is found that the volume of liquid flowing per unit time through the tube depends on the pressure gradient P by L. How fast is pressure changing?
changing.
Which is the same logic here. Like if pressure changes really fast, fluid should flow fast, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So P by L gradient is one thing that it depends on. Coefficient of viscosity and radius are other things. So he just does this, right? Should be having units of volume per unit time,
mm,
right?
yeah,
Mhm.
Some constant. Okay.
yeah,
So now he just does dimensional analysis here. Each thing he will find the units in SI units for this also, put powers and then solve for A, B, and C, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. So by solving this, he found it equal to K P R power 4 by NL. Okay. So V by T is coming out to be equal to this. Now notice that dimensional analysis can only take you so far. It cannot give you the value of the K. Okay.
Okay, yeah,
Right. So value of the K he has just said at the end, it is equal to pi by 8. It cannot be derived from dimensional analysis.
yeah,
Okay. So
Okay.
the
Yeah.
real derivation will tell you how pi by 8 comes, right?
right,
So finally, you have this rate of viscous fluid flow, which is V by T is equal to pi P R power 4 by 8 eta L, right? Now this is the formula that you need to remember. And here P means what? It is actually not pressure, it is pressure difference between the two ends, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Pressure difference between the two ends, and L is the length of the tube. Length of tube. R is radius of the tube, obviously, and everything else is explanatory, right?
yeah,
So this is your Poiseuille's equation for rate of fluid flow, right? So
right,
this was fluid flow. The next thing is Stokes' law, which is solid flow. Stokes' law talks about how fast is a solid going to fall through a fluid. Solid falling through a fluid,
yeah,
which is the case in many situations, because you can have someone flying down from, or something being dropped from an airplane, right?
yeah,
So you can
yeah,
think of air as the fluid there, and what is the velocity with which something will be dropped, right?
yeah,
What is the velocity that something attains? So obviously a solid falling through air will face a viscous force or frictional force from the air, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
So the analysis here will assume that the solid is spherical. Okay. The solid is
right,
the solid that is falling is spherical. It has radius r. Fluid has coefficient of viscosity eta, and the solid has a velocity v. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Now it is found
yeah,
again here that the viscous force or the upward force on this falling solid, right, is dependent on how fast the solid is falling, what is its radius, and what is the viscosity. So he says it is proportional to radius, velocity, and viscosity, right? Now again, these are powers, right?
yeah,
Again, there is a dimensional analysis derivation here for Stokes' law. So So he says K R power A, V power B, N power eta power C, right?
Yeah.
And again, that should be equal to force. So finally, after doing dimensional analysis, he gets 6 pi eta RV. He doesn't get 6 pi. 6 pi comes through the real derivation, but
Right.
he gets K eta RV, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The constant is 6 pi, and this law is called Stokes law. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
the Stokes law is super important because this will help us find out the terminal velocity of a falling fluid. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So 6 pi, and so what is Stokes law is saying? It's saying the frictional force, friction by air, right?
Yeah.
Will be dependent on the velocity and radius of the body, right?
Yeah.
So when you are thrown off with a high velocity, or maybe you're dropping off from an airplane, you have initial velocity 0. So initial viscosity or Stokes law friction is 0. But as you fall due to gravity, your V increases, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
as your V increases, this friction also increases, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, eventually, what will happen if you fall for a suitable amount of time? Eventually, what will happen is these forces will balance, right? And
Yeah.
then you will reach a state of constant velocity motion at terminal velocity, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
That is the final velocity that you reach before you die, as you hit the ground. Terminal velocity will be attained. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so how will you calculate it? So suppose this is your body, you are having a radius r and you are falling and your weight is w, then obviously there is also buoyancy force due to the fluid, right?
Yeah.
Force of
Yeah.
buoyancy.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
the buoyancy force due to the fluid will be, for air will not be much, but if it is in a liquid it will be much more, right?
Yeah.
It is weight of fluid displaced, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So your volume into a rho of the fluid, right, into G, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct. And this is actually V into rho of solid into G, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah. Got it.
And this resultant of these two will be downward and will be what is bringing you down, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there will be Stokes law of friction, viscosity.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so your terminal velocity will be attained when viscosity is able to balance out this and this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So viscosity 6 pi eta RV should be equal to the downward force here. So that will be W minus B, right?
Right.
So that will be V rho S minus rho L G, right?
Yeah.
Should be equal to 6 pi eta RV. And V, because we are assuming sphere, it will be 4 by 3 pi R cube. And rho S minus rho L G. And this is 6 pi eta RV. And now pi will get cancelled and you get velocity will become 4 r cube by 3 into 6 eta r and rho s minus rho l G, right? So this is becoming 2 by 9, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is becoming r square. So you get velocity terminal is 2 by 9 r square rho s minus rho l G is cancelling, no, G by eta, right?
Right, yeah.
Right. Right.
Correct. So
Yeah.
9 eta is coming, and 2 by 9 r square rho s minus rho l G by eta, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That is your velocity expression for terminal velocity.
Okay.
Okay. So now you can actually do an experiment and find out this. There is a 14.19 is finding coefficient of viscosity of a liquid by doing a nice experiment here. So generally, coefficient of viscosity, you need to know about several liquids, no, to do any analysis, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
this is not easy to find or measure because the forces are really tiny. You cannot directly measure it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and it will be difficult to set up an experiment to measure it directly also. So what they do is throw or drop a tiny spherical body through a liquid, right?
Yeah.
And now they measure velocity of the body as it comes down, right?
Right.
In a liquid. So eventually it will follow this Stokes law terminal velocity thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They will measure the velocity, they know the radius, they know the densities and all, and now they'll get eta, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a more convenient way to find out each liquid's viscosity. So highly viscous liquids will be ones which have large eta, right? So if you have a large eta, that means that your terminal velocity will be lower. You cannot go with a very high speed through that liquid, right?
Yeah, right.
Air will have a very low eta, and water will have considerably more eta,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is Stokes law, terminal velocity. So what are the 3-4 things here right now? Basically, before this we have seen so far, after capillary tube, we had coefficient of viscosity stuff, viscous force, viscosity. Then we had Poisson's equation. Then we had Stokes law, then terminal velocity. And each thing, the terminology, you need to be clear on what it means, each thing, right?
Yeah.
Here, this was force is equal to minus eta A dV by dz. Here it
Yeah.
was volume rate of flow of viscous fluid through a tube, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This was pi p r4 by 8 eta L. This was Stokes law for a solid which is falling through a fluid, right? What is the
Yeah.
viscous force on it? It will be 6 pi eta rv. And this was terminal velocity of that body only as it falls through a fluid. That will be 2 by 9 eta rho minus this. This is rho s minus rho l basically, and r square by g, right? No, not g.
Yeah.
No G
No
right
g.
on top.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
So no, g is on top, right?
On top, yeah.
R square g. So these meanings and these equations are very important because direct questions will come from here. Okay.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and if you know it, if you understand it, it is a free mark. Okay. So you need to know this. Then last thing that we'll do here is critical velocity and Reynolds number. So what is he saying here? When a fluid flows in a tube with a small velocity, the flow is steady. Okay. So slowly, if the fluid is passing through a liquid, through a tube, then it is steady flow usually. As the velocity is gradually increased, at one stage the flow becomes turbulent. Okay. So the largest velocity before flow becomes turbulent.
Yeah.
Largest velocity before flow becomes turbulent is called critical velocity. Becomes turbulent is known as critical velocity. Now, how do you find out this critical velocity? The calculations and all are not given to us. The formula, it is probably going to be different for different fluids. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Each fluid will have its own value of critical velocity.
Yeah.
And depends on the tube also, like where the fluid is flowing, right? So
Right.
this is just a theoretical point for at this stage. You will not use it so much. Then whether the flow will be steady or turbulent mainly depends on density, velocity, and coefficient of viscosity of the fluid, as well as the diameter of the fluid through which the fluid is of the tube through which the fluid is flowing.
Yeah.
So basically, whether flow is steady or not depends on what factors: density, velocity, viscosity, diameter, radius of the tube, right? All of these factors determine whether fluid flow is steady or not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This number, Reynolds number, is calculated, and that number is basically rho v diameter by eta. Okay. Capital D is diameter. Okay.
Yeah.
Rho v capital D by eta. This value for any fluid will be less than 2000, then flow is steady. Greater than 3000, then flow is turbulent. And between 2000 to 3000, we can't say anything. It could be both. It could be steady, turbulent. We don't know. Flow is unstable. Okay, flow could
Yeah,
be
yeah.
steady or turbulent depending on what the fluid wants. Okay,
Yeah.
less than 2000, mostly flow is steady.
Right.
So this calculation can be easily done depending on the situation by you, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Given the density, velocity, diameter of the tube and eta, you can easily do this calculation. And this is a heuristic. This is not a law or anything. This is just a good hint, right? That if
Yeah.
the value comes out to be 1000 or something, then likely that the flow is steady. And
Yeah.
greater than 3000, likely that it will be turbulent flow. Okay, so
So the velocity is instantaneous or
this is just velocity of the fluid. So
okay, okay.
instantaneous, instantaneous only. Like you will measure it at some instant. No?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That instant, the velocity of the fluid. Obviously, the velocity could be different if cross section is changing, but we are not doing those calculations.
Yeah.
We are
Okay.
not thinking of those complications. We are thinking the tube is fixed diameter. Okay, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
velocity
yeah.
should be same, right? And
Yeah.
again, we are assuming that the velocity is the velocity of that central portion, not the variable velocity, right? Actually, velocity is variable inside the tube.
Yeah, yeah.
The layers near the tube walls are zero velocity,
Zero velocity.
but we are assuming that near the center or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is not some hard and fast rule. Okay, fluid flow and all is really complicated, and nobody has really solved it. So
Yeah.
So these are all guidelines in general. Like these are experimental verification. This has turned out to be true. That's why it is in the textbook.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. So that ends this chapter. You should try out the questions here. And what we will do next is in physics, we will actually start electromagnetism. Okay.
Okay.
We have to do thermodynamics, but I don't want to waste any more time before electromagnetism. I want to start electromagnetism before. Thermodynamics is super easy, so I will do it later. Okay.
So we are doing optics and
Optics and
yeah, and
Uh,
Alan.
you are only doing ray optics, no?
yeah. So
Wave optics is not there.
No, no, not yet. But I
Yeah.
think later.
That will come after EMI electromagnetism
Okay.
is done. So I will
Yeah.
not be doing optics right now because optics is, I don't know why they do optics in the beginning, half of it and half of it at the end. So Alan's schedule is totally weird here. They start with ray optics for what reason I don't understand. Every year they start with ray optics in 12th and then they will do wave optics after the end. After doing electricity in the middle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So then by then you will have forgotten everything in ray optics and then you will come to wave optics. So that is not an ideal way to study. So I will not be doing ray optics right now. We will do electricity and magnetism, which is one of the most important portions.
Yeah.
As soon as they finish ray optics, they will start electric field and all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at your next booklet in the chapter which is after that, it will be this. So what we have pending in physics is thermodynamics, optics, and modern physics, because we will be starting with electromagnetism right now. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So electromagnetism will take 2-3 months properly doing it. So let's focus on that. This is very important. So we'll do it in great detail.
Right.
Then we will go back to thermodynamics. How are you guys feeling comfort levels in this thermodynamics?
Yeah, thermodynamics is like fine only, I guess.
So if you are feeling like it is fine, and if anyway you have to revise it and all, right?
Yeah.
So what you should do is do the KTG chapter exercises, and then there is a chapter on laws of thermodynamics, and then there is a chapter on there are 4 chapters that you have to do from HCV. Okay. KTG, laws of thermodynamics, then there is a chapter on specific heat capacities of gases, and finally there is a chapter on heat transfer. There are 4 chapters. Okay. So these 4 chapters exercises, if you are feeling okay with your Allen book, whatever you have read and all, you should definitely do every question in these 4 chapters.
So these chapters are in the second book or the
Volume 2.
first one?
Volume
Oh,
2.
volume 2. Okay, okay.
Mm.
Volume 2, the first few chapters.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The first few chapters, ignore the first chapter, which is temperature and all. It is also important, but you know all of that. And it will just talk about different types of thermometers and all,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah.
ignore that, but these 4 chapters are super important. You should actually be practicing that. Okay. You should know
Yeah.
how to solve problems here. We will come to them and we will be focusing on these chapters when we do it, thermodynamics. So right now, if they are doing ray optics, you should at home be reading the ray optics section in HCV. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There is a geometrical optics chapter. So it is coming after light waves, I think. Yeah, it comes after light waves. Light waves is the wave optics chapter.
Right.
So in general, the sequence should be you do optics at once, everything together. But for your Alan, you can prepare from HCV also and do whatever they are doing in glass. But mostly our focus in classes will be on electricity and magnetism from the next class. Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, that's all for now. Uh, I will try and do a chemistry class tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow.
Okay, sir, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll see you then. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye,
Nice.
sir.
Mm.